Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of VCTV. I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott. We've got a fun episode because we're talking about the future of work and education today. A lot has changed over the last years. We've continually covered this topic here on VCTV, but things are changing yet again. We're starting to hear more conversation around flexible work and education spaces, new tools and platforms that are emerging that are being required for this change of pace for us. But what does it all mean for you as an entrepreneurs and investors? That's what we're going to find out. Big shout out to the LATOKEN team and to Maria for making today's episode possible. With that, let's go ahead and introduce my co-host, Gary Fowler. Welcome to the show. A little intro background.
Great to be here, Kyle. I feel like we're back on Family Hour again, See my friend Jason, yourself, and some new friendly faces. My name is Gary Fowler. I'm a serial entrepreneur and investor. I've done 17 companies, 2 unicorns. I was on the original management team of Click Software, sold to Salesforce 30 months ago for $1.35 billion, and also Eva.ai, an AI HR tech company that I co-founded 5 years ago with Dr. David Yang. I'm the CEO, president, and co-founder of GSD Get You Done Venture Studios, a premier AI and quantum venture studio located in Silicon Valley in Santa Clara. We love AI and quantum computing. We curate companies from around the world, from Africa, from Australia, from the US, from Europe, Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, bringing them to Silicon Valley, using it to port to the rest of the world. And we're really looking at companies that have an impact. So culturally diverse and working on issues around environment, using AI and quantum technology. So appreciate being here. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for being here as well, Jason.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Kyle and LATOKEN for having me back. I always enjoy these conversations. I spent 20 plus years on the front lines with entrepreneurs and investors in the Midwest part of the US. I'm based in Chicago. I've been very active helping companies raise capital. I run the Founder Institute program in Chicago, which is a global program in over 200 cities around the world. And I launched Propellant Ventures last year, which is a seed stage fund. We're all about bold investing, empowering the future. We look at B2B industries such as healthcare, future work, fintech, edtech, supply chain, and we are very focused on the Midwest of the US. We believe there's a lot of great opportunities, untapped value, and that's our main focus. We've made a few investments. One in particular is in the future of work. Within that, it's in virtual event space. So we've been excited about their growth and trajectory. So as always, glad to be here.
Wonderful. Last but not least, Michael, welcome to the show. First time. A little intro, a little background for everybody.
Yeah, sure. Exciting times for a researcher like me. I'm actually originally a industry manager. Have been worked for Microsoft several years. And over 10 years ago, I returned to university in order to focus on research in the area of mobile work, agility, so the new world of work. And I'm excited to discuss the topic today, as last year and this year brought a big change and turnaround, and a quantum leap, actually, as far as our worlds of work are related.
Wonderful. And Michael, let's go ahead and jump right into that. And I would love to hear your view on all of this, because as I mentioned in the introduction, we have talked greatly about the flexible future of work. And that looks like that might be slipping more into education than we saw previously, because we had online universities, we had online education, but it looks like it actually may be, here to stay in a more aggressive fashion. So tell us from what you're seeing and some of the research you've been doing on the future of work and education.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to do that. Sure, universities, that's the mode of survival, and many universities were already prepared, so it hasn't been a huge step from some maybe blended learning to 100% online. The bigger change happened in organizations, as about 80 to 90% of organizations had to jump into a home office scheme. And with the home office came a quantum leap into a fully digitized workplace. And the exciting thing is actually the outcome. At the end of these 1.5 years, which we see now, and vaccinations being completed and organizations starting to return to normal, the new normal looks like that 70 to 80% of employees expect of their employer to continue mobile work, flexible work, in a highly digitized work environment. And over 60 to 70% of organizations are prepared to go down that route and stick to high levels of flexibility and mobility. So the new normal for most organizations and employees will be a much higher level of flexibility and mobility and level of digitization at the workplace after Corona. So for a time from July, September, August, September on. Does it kind of
it definitely
give a
makes
comprehensive
sense.
picture for the start? So great numbers.
It is, and it does, and I think we're going to see very interesting emergence, right, where people either want or don't. But I think you're also right. I mean, companies have to digitize, and if they don't, that actually can hurt them. We've also heard a lot of pushback around talent and how companies do welcome employees back to their offices or provide those flexible services where they do and where they don't, because what has been talked a lot about here in the United States is this great upcoming potential, just everybody leaving their jobs, this reshuffle, as they're calling it, the great reshuffle, where employees are saying, hey, you're not offering the benefits that I want, the flexible work, to your point, Michael, of being able to work from home, being able to work from the office, whatever it may be. You don't offer the services and the tools, et cetera. So I'm leaving and I'm going somewhere that does. Which is going to be interesting to see how that plans out. And Jason, I mean, you've been studying this area along with education. What are you seeing that's kind of evolving over these two industries, again, work and education, in the future of?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of acceleration of technology that maybe was a couple years out, but because of what we've experienced over last year, things are happening sooner than later, particularly future of work. And I'll take a segment of that as the virtuality or virtual events or virtual meeting spaces. We've had a huge growth in that. The Hopin, for example, has been on an acquisition spree. They've raised a lot of money. They bought StreamYard, which is the platform we're all on today, and so they're really starting to consolidate the industry a little bit. But there's a ton of virtual event platforms out there. We personally, as I mentioned before, invested in one of them, and there's more choices now. I mean, people will still go back to in person, but at the same time, companies and individuals realize that, hey, we can do a lot of this stuff virtual. We can reach more people. We have more engagement opportunities with sponsors and attendees, and we can save a ton of money by not having to travel. And whether that's a virtual event or that's a meeting with a company, there's a lot of things happening right now that I believe is here to stay. And there'll be a hybrid for many people, but there's options, and there are things we can do now remotely that we couldn't do in person. So I'm really excited about where the space is headed. And I would say with education or ed tech, same thing. There's been an acceleration, especially in higher ed. I've got kids that are teenagers, and their schools were not equipped for this remote life. Well, they definitely are now, and so this is all something that has pushed the education space to get on top of technology, so they're equipped for when this may happen again. There may not be snow days anymore either, because for those that have snow, because you can do remote learning. There's actually a local high school by us that didn't have snow days because they were well equipped for this way before the pandemic. So snow days are gone for, I think, many kids now. And same thing with corporate education. There's an acceleration of that as well. I mean, that's a big space too. And Coursera, has gone into the corporate B2B in education. They're not so much on consumer focus anymore. So there's a growth in that area. So and investors really are starting to see exits now in the ed tech space. So there's a lot of money going into it right now. So I'm excited about it.
No more snow days. How sad. The days of old. But I think you're right, right? The flexibility of those types of things. The question will be is how do we react to that? Not necessarily just from a primary school perspective, but also as in the workforce. How do we adjust for that time and making sure that we're not working 100 hours a week when we don't necessarily need to be, which has been a problem for many over the last 12, almost 15 months. But before we get there, Gary, anything else to add on to Michael and Jason's point of how the future of work and education is developing from your view?
Yeah, I mean, it's so as you know, Eva.ai is one of my companies. That's a remote workforce management company. So it's dramatically changed. At the beginning of the pandemic, our business is up 38 times inbound interest. And part of the reason is that, as having employees at home, how do you manage those employees effectively? How do you understand whether or not those employees are happy? How do you survey those employees to understand what's happening with them today, using things like knowledge graphs and machine learning to map relationships within the companies? So it came to being at the beginning of the pandemic and through the pandemic that we needed to be able to use the technology to be able to manage a remote force better. And I'll give you an example. So today, currently, you have a 1-year employee review. But why isn't it happening on a daily basis? I mean, it's like your health check for your employee and the relationship the employee has. Why would we wait a year? They have a review, month after review, there's challenges, but we wait till things fester. And then think about it, with high value employees, you don't want to lose them. So what you want to do is get to the root of the problem before it becomes an issue. The other side of it is who's productive, who's not, what kind of relationships, and more importantly, using things like not smart, but intelligent assistants to be able to drive some of that behavior, to be able to drive some of that direction, to be able to help the employees better. And think about the key insights. Imagine if a salesperson is speaking to a company, a customer, and the system, the intelligent assistants, giving highlights of what's happening in that conversation to be able to help you drive it better and to be able to fulfill the customer's needs. So we're really at the tip of the iceberg. In the pandemic, I mean, think about it, 93% of the companies, according to McKinsey, at the beginning of the pandemic, were going through a digital transformation. Well, there's places like India today and parts of the US that are still going through it. We're not out of it yet. So we need to use what we have. People have really dramatically shifted. They're not living in, for instance, in Silicon Valley. They're becoming more decentralized, moving to other parts of the country and other parts of the world. And so we need to adapt to the change. We need to have the systems in place that can help us manage better. And we need to be able to understand, it's funny because if we look at HR, the human capital's really one of our most important assets, but there's one we don't focus on the most, and it's antiquated. We need to use these technologies to be able to help us manage better and to be able to make the companies and the employees happier.
Well, and find a good rotation as well, right? I mean, every day is a little probably aggressive to do kind of one-on-ones with each individual, and it's not scalable. But I mean, there are some great platforms we've had in the past that until now probably are much more important. So a company like 15Five, for instance, which allowed for an employee to fill out a survey of how they're feeling in 5 minutes and a manager to review that in 15, or vice versa as well. So just give those insights, because you're right. I mean,
but
using
that's a
Slack
survey, Kyle. That's a survey where you're proactive, right? The difference when we're doing sentiment analysis, looking at corporate communications, it's an entirely different
as
model,
well.
right?
I agree with that.
All surveys are part of the package, but it's when you take a 360-degree view, and not a lot of companies do it, to be able to understand what's happening so you can course correct faster. Because it costs a lot of money to hire somebody when you have somebody on a team, an engineer, for instance, that's or a manager, high value employee, and they decide to leave, and they're taking all that intellectual capital with them, moving into a potential competitor. So how do we make it better? And most of the time it's because they have challenges with their managers or other employees, and it just festers. So let's take care of the
Well,
problem, the issue before it's a problem, right?
and also understanding why they left as well. If they do, sometimes people leave because they want to leave. It's right. It's their choice. But to your point, there's other reasons. But also, why did they leave? And you're bringing up a great point. Is that we're able to leverage data in a way we hadn't before. And now with this flexible work force that we may be moving into in many areas, not all of the jobs market, that data is going to be very important. I mean, if you're working from home, you don't see everybody. The way you interact on a video call is very different than the way you act in person. Emotional behaviors, physical behavior, all those things, those triggers, those key indicators are just not there as they are in person. But Gary's got a great point of where these platforms are headed. I want to take a quick step back in education. I had an article just sent to me as well, and I think this is fascinating. I know a number of ways we probably all have tried to do this, whether it was writing answers on your hand, on the inside of your arm, on a calculator, whatever it may have been. There was always a way to get ahead of the game on a test in some way, shape, or form in school. Well, now cheating in education has become a big problem because it is so easy. As you're sitting in front of a screen with no one providing oversight, you're able to find the answers to certain questions or in terms of information. So how will educators, if they stay in this flexible type environment, to Jason's point, no more snow days, how will they overcome this very big problem of cheating and finding the answers at will without the process of thinking through it? So Jason, I'm gonna throw this one to you. You're a big component of the future of education. How do we handle this? Oh, Jason, sorry, you were on mute there as well. So, oh, looks like we might have lost you for a second.
Yeah,
Michael, yeah, it's okay. Michael, I'm going to come to you. I mean, talk to us about this.
Yeah.
You're studying the future of education as well. Why? I mean, how are we going to prepare to hedge on this? And this will go back into the workforce. So Jason, hold on. I'm going to go to Michael, and then we'll come back.
Pretty straightforward. It's competency-oriented learning instead of learning stuff by heart, repeating it and replicating it. It's about competency orientation. And that means in a school or university, a lot of project-oriented work where you develop, where you need creativity, where you need to structure yourself and a team, and where you use data and information that you have to analyze and research. And that's a different way of learning. And learning stuff by heart is outdated. You can Google things within seconds. It's about competencies, really, to solve and for problem solving. And there, cheating doesn't count, doesn't matter. And that will be great progress in the education sector if we turn more towards competency-oriented learning and development.
Jason, I think you're back. Any further thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I'm just thinking around the tools that are out there. I remember speaking to an entrepreneur a little while ago. He created called a digital calculator. Instead of students using, a traditional calculator, it's within a mobile device, and the teachers can actually monitor their usage of it, so they can control the device, so to speak. So they can't they can't look on browsers or search for anything. They can actually see what they're doing. So there are extra controls like that teachers can have on their students in that, in a controlled environment. So we're going to see more of that, and so that prevents cheating. Also, I do teach a class at the college level, and our exams are online, and it's a basic system. But I don't do this, but you can do it. You can actually have monitor their browser movements through their camera. So you can look and see what they're doing by turning on their camera, so if they're looking on sites or anywhere else to look for information. So some teachers do that, but there are tools like that to prevent cheating. Now, it still happens. I still have students that sometimes get 100%. And so that maybe I give them too much time on each question, right? But the fact is there are some controls out there to help with that. But students are smart. I mean, there's still ways around that. But there are more and more tools like that to control that environment.
I mean, I
Keep
just
an
thought
old
of like,
school system alive, and education
yeah,
system.
I
Since it's
just
not
thought of
about
5 as you're telling us that.
replication of knowledge, it's about application of knowledge. That's
Yeah,
also
you're
required much more in a flexible work environment. Problem solving on your own with teams, not a boss available to tell you what to do, and we need to prepare kids and students for this. Sorry for bringing this up, but we need we need massive change here and adapt. We did a 10 years leap, and education sector is also on the way. That's the positive signs here that we can clearly see.
Agreed. I was just saying, Jason, as you were mentioning that, I thought of 5 ways I could outsmart your system. Now I'm a little older than I was in your days of young, so maybe that's my my older wisdom. But nonetheless, and this wasn't even tapping Gary Fowler down there, the Grandmaster of Artificial Intelligence, and what we could do. But all jokes aside, I think you're right, and Michael is also bringing up the point of education needing to change in the way that we either present or the types of education that we provide as well, because this flexible workspace and this entire digital economy that we're building into is very different than what we've had for the past 10, 20, 50, 100 years. New skills, new ways of thinking, of critical thinking and working together are going to be necessary. Gary, anything to add around this world of education that we're talking about?
I mean, the whole idea is how to engage the student, how to make that student experience richer, and how to be able to use artificial intelligence and technologies to make it immersive. I mean, think about it. It doesn't matter where I am now. If I want to take a safari in Kenya, all I have to do is I might have to bring up my Oculus Rift or my AR, VR, and I can actually become part of that safari anywhere. So it's about really hyper-personalizing and enriching those experiences. At the same time, education, has been really, you come into a classroom, everybody's educated at the same level. The key is how to have prescriptive educational programs that are designed directly for that student, that caters to their ability using artificial intelligence to be able to help them learn better in the way, whether they're visual, auditory, the way that helps them to be able to grasp the information. So those kind of technologies are coming out now. We need to be able to use those as part of the entire program. The shift, as we're starting to come a bit out of the pandemic and kids start going to school, I'm hoping the lessons learned during the pandemic are transferred to classroom education, because we've on a good note, we've had that. So that's in a high school level. I mean, then the college level, it doesn't matter where you are, you can study anywhere. And with courses like Coursera and Udemy and incredible courses out there, you can learn anything. And so our world has shifted. The question is, are we all going to adapt to it or not? And what are we going to value? Do we really need to have a paid for diploma, or can we use learning by doing models and that are low cost, but you get the same impact?
Absolutely. And Michael, I want to come to you next on this question is, what's next? Where do we go from here? What are those opportunities that those may be looking to build and or invest in when it comes to this new future of flexible work and education?
It's just the beginning. What we can numbers tell us, business consulting, IT integration companies, IT providers are overbooked. We see over 20% growth in the first quarter in the business consulting sector. What's happening here? It's the effect of shifted customer expectations throughout the last 14, 15 months. Also, customers changed their expectations. Expectations regarding what can be done online, consumed, purchased, information collected. So companies are under pressure to continue digitization or to start digitization, if not having gone down this route already. So there's high pressure due to shifted consumer expectations, and we'll see several studies suggest at least a 3 to 4 to 5 years investment boom into IT, digitization, and change of business models. So new process models, service models, customer journeys, and numbers, revenue numbers in these sectors already tell us it has started. And with it will come further changes in job roles. New processes, more digitization employees have to cope with, a more digitized and even more digitized workplace. We'll see also quite some replacement, redundancies in traditional jobs. We'll see also many new jobs. And we heard about this before from several studies, but it's happening now since the feedback or the kind of verdict is that the last 14, 15 months are regarded to represent a 10 years innovation leap. So we accelerated a lot. And this is just the beginning. So maybe we broke through a barrier. Maybe that's the right picture for what was happening and is happening to us.
Jason, anything to add on to that and your thoughts of opportunities as well? Jason, you're on mute there. Apologies.
And I'm not doing so good today with that. Yeah, just to paint a picture, I mean, 2020 was the record in EdTech funding, 13.3 billion, which surpassed 2018's record by 50%, which previously was record. So there's so much happening right now in the education space. And so we all know, right? I mean, whether it's higher ed, corporate, EdTech, there's an acceleration of digitization of learning. So yeah, there's whether it's mobile or it's teacher centric, student centric. There's just a lot of activity, and there's homeschooling. There's all kinds of stuff that's happening right now. So I think some of the future of work companies also can play into this space as well, such as virtual worlds, whether it's with the VR headsets or browser based. I think crossing those together is definitely real, and it's happening now. And so again, I think we're only at the surface of this. I think there's going to be a lot more happening pretty soon. So
absolutely, Gary. Thank you, Jason. Gary, any thoughts to add on there?
What was the question, Kyle?
Opportunities for investment in future of work or future of education.
Sure. Yes. So the as I said, hyper-personalization, being able to use artificial intelligence to be able to have prescriptive approaches to the students. And really, as I've said many times, having not a smart but intelligent education assistant to help you really navigate the waters. So if math is something that is troubling for you and you need to be tutored, having it be prescriptive to understand how you learn and to be able to provide you those enriched opportunities, and if needed, the right kind of tutors to be able to help. So that's door number one. As I said, the opportunities in augmented reality, virtual reality, to be able to make it richer and to be able to take those students on journeys without ever leaving their houses or the classroom. That's really important. So I'm looking at that. So the hyper-personalized approach to education's there. The distance education, more accepted today for universities. Corporate education, which we didn't talk about a lot, is really important. Now with having remote workers, how do you train those workers without getting them in the conference room? So a lot of it, the good news in the last year, we've had to really catch up and move forward. So if I was a startup out there, I would look at how to make it better, how to make it more personalized, and at the same time, how to take work and from a work standpoint, how to use artificial intelligence, machine learning, unsupervised AI to enrich the experience, and take a 360-degree approach, use the pulse surveys, use surveys, but at the same time, use the AI to understand the communications and how to make it more optimized and better and make it fun. By the way, we gamify it. So if you send more emails out compared to the other people in your department, you get a little trophy. You'd be surprised how many times people want that trophy that means nothing. But we were thinking about, imagine incentivizing it and having rewards like employee rewards. So at the end of the month, you get a certificate for $200, to buy products in a catalog. So those kind of things are just, or tokens, right? That's another way we could do it, that to be able to trade it. So let's be a little bit innovative, and let's not keep it one dimensional. Let's really humanize that experience, and at the same time, use the technology to make it wiser.
Wonderful. Thank you, Gary. And where can everyone find you online to continue the conversations we come to close here today?
Yeah. You can reach me, Gary Fowler, on LinkedIn, Twitter. You can send me an email. I'd love to hear from you. I have shows. Actually, today we have a VC. So I'm doing I almost said VCTV, VC Task Force. So I actually, every 2 weeks, I highlight the top startup globally and have them on the show. So check it out. It's a great family. Great being here, Kyle. And you provided a very valuable asset during some of the darkest times that we've had, in the last, 100 plus years. We've been able to stay happy and stay hopeful because of being connected through VCTV. And I've heard it of startups from all over the world have approached me and said that, it's made it a bit of light at the darkest times. So it's really good that you put this on.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Gary. Couldn't do it without the full team, LATOKEN, Maria, and Hasmek, and everyone who makes this all possible as well. But thank you very, very, very much. And of course, you all as well. And Jason, any closing thoughts? And of course, where can you be found online?
Yeah, I just think this space is continuing to accelerate. A lot of activity with funding and exits and unicorns that are happening in this space. And so, it's about time that it's been accelerated, especially in ed tech. Future work is obviously a growing space as well. So people can find me at LinkedIn, of course. Also, feel free to email me at jason@propellant.vc. And thanks again for having me. This has also been very enjoyable over the last year.
Thank you. Thank you as well, Jason. Appreciate that. Michael, any closing thoughts? And then also, where can you be found online as well?
A lot of channels, and I like the idea of that we'll see much more flexibility, fluidity in all sectors, business models, working environments, and education, module and flexible study programs, flexible school curricula. So that's a great future ahead of us, and we are already, as far as our mindset is concerned. It was never better before than now. And you find me everywhere, all channels, LinkedIn, my own blog, New World of Work, several books, classical books. So if you like paper, if you're a paper tiger, reach out to my books. There's one of the latest in English is Digital Transformation Toolbox. So check out Amazon, for example, and get a real book.
Love it. Highly recommended to those who haven't. Real books are great. Thank you very much, Michael, Jason, Gary, for your thoughts and insights on the future of work and education as well. To our audience, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you click subscribe, like, and share today's episode. Also, check out the archive on LATOKEN.com to hear from today's speakers and all speakers of the VCTV family. And make sure you reach out to each and every one of my co-hosts today, including myself. We would love to each hear from you, what you're building, what you're working on, and please do add context where you heard us, where you met us, and what you would like to continue the conversation about as well. With that being said, everyone have a wonderful day. We'll see you back here tomorrow with more VCTV. Big thank you to the LATOKEN team and to Maria for making today's episode possible. With that, I'm your host, Kyle LaCotte. Everyone have a great day.
Bye-bye.